When I first heard about AIDS, it was those people. Absolutely those people. I didn't fit the profile. HIV became more personal when my husband was diagnosed in November of 1991. He was in the hospital with PCP. His doctor walked in the room and said, "Your test came back positive, you have AIDS," and then walked out. And he was left there on his own. Like he said, if the windows were able to open, he would have jumped. And that was his introduction to having AIDS. The first person that actually walked in the room after he got that diagnosis was my mom. And she, all she did was hold him. And then, of course, the reality set in that I would have to be tested, and that became something else for her. My first thing that went to my head was I had two young children, and they were 18 months and 5 years old. Then once my test became positive, I had to have my children tested. That was a whole big game changer for me, a dose of reality. And thankfully, they both tested negative. And that kind of gave me a confirmation to move forward and live with this disease. They told me that my husband had a 50% chance of walking out of the hospital room alive, totally and permanently disabled. And so I knew that his work career was over. As far as I was concerned, I had my two young children to take care of. In terms of goals, I was just at that point hoping to live to see 30. They told me I probably had 8 to 10 years to live because of where my CD4 count was. I was 26 years old at the time I was diagnosed. I think for me, it wasn't about my diagnosis as much as it was about my husband's. My own health didn't come into effect for a few years after my diagnosis. I eventually got angry that I got infected, angry at the lifestyle we both lived. I never did any kind of intravenous drugs. I did a lot of cocaine, a lot of alcohol, a lot of weed. My husband, on the other hand, did use injection drugs. I wanted to learn everything I could about this disease. What am I facing? How am I going to face this? What do I need to do? So I participated in the luncheons. I got involved. I started volunteering, support groups, none of which my husband really wanted to participate in, but I did. That was kind of the start of my journey, I guess you would say. I was really scared to take the medication because I watched my husband get so sick from it. How many times a day? 3 times a day, handfuls of medication, and him just feeling horrible. I couldn't afford that because I had to take care of my kids. I couldn't afford to be sick in bed and get them off to school and get their homework done and get them to whatever they were participating in. And so I didn't want to take it. There became a point where I felt like, hey, okay, it's time. And that was about 4 to 5 years after being diagnosed. And it was really hard for me. I talked to my doctor about it. He said, okay, I'm going to write you a prescription. And I think I started on D4T and 3TC. I think at that time, protease inhibitors had just come out. And so shortly after, I believe I was on a protease as well. I don't really consider myself an activist. I feel like I have been a voice for people who are not able to speak. And that just kind of happened naturally. When I first found out, there wasn't really too many people on Oahu talking about this disease. And so, I kind of became the face of HIV for a long time. I did a lot of media. I started to be that person that they would ask because not too many people would do so. And I was asked to speak with women who were in drug treatment facilities because we shared kind of the same path. As a youth, I was a real rascal and, at risk myself. And then, so I related. I was still very young at that time, so I could still relate to them. And the women in the drug treatment facilities, the prisons, that could have been me. And I was just lucky I never got caught. Yeah, that's where I started. And then there was an opening at the Life Foundation for a position in the prevention department for women at risk. Perfect fit. I'd like to see a day where I don't have to take a medication or don't have to remember. Psychologically, I think it was a real burden for me. Every time I filled up my pill box, it's a reminder. And although, I'm pretty healthy and, I live to live, not live to die, it still comes to mind that, I still have this disease that could take me out. And, if I get really sick at times, there's always that fear because of what I've witnessed in the past. I've watched a lot of people pass and, why? You go through that. Why? How is it that I'm able to live and they weren't? I don't know. I couldn't identify it at the time, but a certain time of the year, every year, I would get really depressed. I would just want to stay in my room and just shut the world out. And after a while, I realized that I can't keep doing that, but I got to allow myself to feel what I feel. But I had to put a cap on it. Okay, 3 to 5 days, do whatever you want. Don't eat ice cream all you want, or don't stay in bed, whatever. But after 5 days, it's enough. Pity party is over and it's time to move on. And usually the way I was able to get out of that was to be able to work with someone else or help someone else. And that's kind of been the story of my life, I guess. Whenever I'm struggling, the way for me to get out of it is to find someone else that's struggling and help them through it.